Okay, so today is April 5th, and I live in a blue state, Oregon. This is my courthouse here, and not one single person is protesting. I mean, why would you want to protest no taxes? Why would you want to protest people finding fraud? Why would you want to protest, Social Security fraud? I mean, come on, be real now. It's glad to see that fucking Democrats aren't that stupid, but at least not here anyway.
Carrie, we are going to have some fun together on this one. The universe absolutely knew what it was doing when I sat down to open up TikTok so that I could film a video discussing the protests all over our state, and your video was the very first one that I saw. First of all, I'm not sure what town you're in or what time of day you filmed your video, because the protests, they actually didn't go all day long, and a lot of them were staggered, with the ones in small towns running either before or after ones in larger cities so that folks could go to multiple events if they wanted to, like I did. But let's just look at your claim that the Democrats didn't turn out. We're not going to even touch all of the false claims that you are regurgitating from Donald Trump and Elon Musk's Twitter feeds or from Fox News. Let's just address your claim that Oregonians did not turn out to protest the Trump regime, the authoritarian takeover of the United States by a fascist dictator. I'm going to be citing the Oregon Capitol Chronicle from yesterday, April 5th at 9:39 p.m. The journalist's name is Julia Shumway. First of all, there were more than 1,200 scheduled events all across the United States and more in Canada and Europe. But you think nobody in Oregon showed up. Well, no one in Oregon showed up to the more than 100 events scheduled across our state alone. Okay, let's just dive into this article from the Capitol Chronicle. Across Oregon, thousands join hands-off protests against Trump and Musk. Oregonians turned out to protest on Saturday from Astoria to Gold Beach, from Portland to Pendleton, and dozens of cities in between. The common theme of demonstrations in Oregon and across the U.S., President Donald Trump, billionaire Elon Musk, and his illegitimate Department of Government Efficiency need to take their hands off our Medicaid, our Social Security, our reproductive rights, our tariffs, immigrants, LGBTQIA Americans, and more. Our veterans, our libraries, our stroke and cancer research, our schools, our food banks. We could just go on and on. Several Oregon news outlets agreed to share reporting and photos to give readers a fuller look that none of them could provide on their own. Excerpts from that combined report are here on Oregon Capitol Chronicle's website. Now, before I get into what they say about the various protests around the state, please remember that legacy media is massively underreporting the turnout, and people who are at the demonstrations, organizers of the various demonstrations around the country, are citing figures that are often tenfold what is being reported by legacy media. Please understand, if you are reading an account of how many folks showed up, that number is going to be far below what the total turnout actually was. In Salem, the state's capital, protesters spilled into the surrounding streets and parks, but the main group of protesters was concentrated along Center Street in front of the Capitol building, where protesters banged pots and pans, blew horns, chanted into megaphones. The constant honking in support of the protests from passing vehicles created a raucous scene, and many drivers on Center Street raised their fists and waved at protesters in support. One protester said, "Trump is breaking the law and they are taking over our government and dismantling it. And they've sunk the stock market. Elon Musk has no place here. They've taken away our programs that our tax dollars are paying for. I knew that Trump was dishonest before he got voted in. I didn't vote for him, and everybody that has voted for him needs to take a look at what is really going on." In Medford, in Southern Oregon, which is very red, 2,000 protesters showed up at Hawthorne Park. I already posted a video about how there were multiple protests in the Portland metro area. I went to one in East Portland in the morning and then took the Max down to the downtown one. The Oregonian just says crowds of thousands. The initial estimate of how many people they expected was 10,000, and I saw reports of how many actually showed up as being as high as 30,000, but I have not seen an official count yet. I know that I have never been to a protest in Portland, Oregon that had as many people as that event did yesterday when we marched over the Morrison Bridge. Now, you could write off Portland because if you're a Fox News viewer, you think that we're just a bunch of pinkos. So let's look at some really conservative parts of the state. How about Josephine County? According to their county's elections office, they went 73% for Donald Trump in the November election. And yet hundreds and hundreds of people were lined up along 6th Street in Grants Pass to protest the Trump regime. Now let's look at Klamath County, where voters for Trump outnumbered voters for Kamala almost 3-1. In the Republican stronghold of Klamath County, 400 residents gathered in protest on the side of a busy intersection in Klamath Falls. Veterans, educators, healthcare providers, students, senior citizens were unified in protest of the current administration led by Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Hundreds of people are turning out in deeply, deeply red parts of the state. And these very red rural counties don't have a large population base to begin with. So to get hundreds and hundreds of people in a community that went 65, 70, 80% for Donald Trump, that should tell you something. In East Portland, my Congresswoman Maxine Dexter came out to speak, and in Hillsborough, Representative Suzanne Bonamici came out to speak. Hundreds of people were there to listen. Okay, I'm going to talk about this more in another video, but in Madras, which is in Jefferson County, which is very, very, very red, Trump won by more than 30 percentage points. And it's also a community that has been in favor of seceding from Oregon and joining Idaho because they think that Salem and Portland and Eugene are like too liberal and they want to go move with all of the MAGA chuds in Idaho. Yeah, that county had more than 100 people turn out. One protester there said, "I'm tired of being quiet and I don't want anyone after all of this to ask me, why didn't you say anything?" And in Ashland, again, in Southern Oregon, again, in a county that went for Trump, by the way, their county's election website looks like it's still running Windows 95, more than 300 protesters gathered. The predominantly older crowd was deeply concerned about cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Kay Hagan, 65, said she joined the rally because I feel that I have to do something. This is wrong. This is not the country I was raised in, and this is not okay. I realize that we are not likely to reach the hardcore MAGAs who are deeply, deeply entrenched in that cult, like the woman who made the video at the beginning that I'm responding to. They live in an alternate reality where facts do not matter. The goalpost will constantly be moved. They will do anything to justify their worship and adoration of Donald Trump. I don't know at what point the horrible things he's doing will hurt them enough for them to change their minds. But we do know that folks who voted for Trump because they wanted something different than the status quo. There were swing voters who were dissatisfied with Biden. There were rural Americans who felt they were denied access to the American dream. There were folks all over this country who were working themselves to the bone and bought Trump's lie. As Will Westmoreland likes to say, there is nothing wrong with admitting that you were lied to, right? That's not your fault. That's the liar's fault. That's the person who deceived you's fault. That's not your fault. And there are a lot of Americans who did not vote to have Social Security dismantled. They did not want to see the Department of Ed illegally torn apart. They do not want to see their veterans lose their benefits. They do not want to see their 401ks completely implode and crumble into dust. They don't want to see their farm subsidies taken away. They don't want to see the infrastructure packages from the Biden administration that were meant to bring jobs and revive the economy of their rural communities being stopped by Donald Trump. Those folks are flaming pissed. And so when we see that it's not just big blue cities, it's not just New York and LA and Portland and, places that are considered liberal college towns like Madison, Wisconsin, that have hundreds of folks turning out. We know that something is happening here. We know that the resistance is not just in big blue urban centers. We know that it is everywhere. It's in every community all across this nation. People are angry. People are starting to realize the real harm that this regime is doing. They are starting to realize the very real threat to our democracy, our way of life. That Trump and Musk are doing a power grab and crashing our economy, firing tens of thousands of veterans and fucking with their VA benefits. Pillaging Social Security. That's our money. That's our money. Stopping Alzheimer's research. Trying to dismantle FEMA. Firing our wildfire firefighters, our weather forecasters. Trying to destroy our library systems. Taking hundreds of millions away from our food banks. Trying to wreck our postal service. Taking away health care from 40% of America's pregnant women. All so that Musk and Trump and all the other billionaires can get a big, fat tax break. They want to take our tax money that is used to fund the programs that benefit us, the American people, and line their fat, bloated pockets with it. And that's why Americans all over the country, urban, rural, suburban, red, blue, are all saying, hands off, get your grubby little mitts off of America.